Now, these two guys are sitting at opposite ends of the table, which might make you think that they don't know each other. This is from the next chapter. It's, God, I keep forgetting what it is. It's plug in, tune up, turn on, something like that. Set in the mid-60s. This is the one about the Rascals and the Loving Spoonful, etc., as is obvious here. The Loving Spoonful, the Blues Project, and the Young Rascals represented the three sharp corners of a thriving, triangulated New York rock scene. The Loving Spoonful were clearly New York's preeminent folk rock group. The Blues Project, its leading white blues band and pioneers of a newly expansive and experimental rock sound. And the Young Rascals covered just about every possible base in between. New York's top white rhythm and blues band and dance act, its blue-eyed soul boys, and, crucially, an inspiration to every suburban garage rock group who suddenly thought that they too might be able to land a record deal on top of the charts. Out in Queens, a handful of teenagers at Forest Hills High School formed the Tangerine Puppets. The group covered the Young Rascals' debut single, I Ain't Gonna Eat Out My Heart Anymore, and at a high school talent show, the Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction, during which John Cummings held up his bass like it was a machine gun, gyrating real crazy, as guitarist Tommy Ramone recalled. And that, of course, is our Tommy. He hurt somebody in the audience, rammed somebody. They were questioning whether he did it on purpose or by accident. But then Cummings had that kind of reputation. Fred Smith, an accomplished guitarist at the high school, who gave Adelia a couple of lessons, was in the audience at the talent show and remembered clearly how the vice principal marched on stage to stop them and Tommy threw his lead guitar at the vice principal's nuts. A new generation of teenage rebellion had kicked in across New York City, and this time it wasn't going to get dissipated by Tin Pan Alley. The Tangerine Puppets played their share of Sweet 16 parties, carrying their equipment on the subway. A peak of sorts was reached when they were booked to play for a private party during the day, the living room, where the Young Rascals had performed regularly. But Cummings, Adele, and Smith would need to wait the best part of a decade to make their musical impact. So I'd like you to welcome Tommy Adele, Tommy Ramone, and Fred Smith. Thank you very much. All right, this is from the next chapter, All Tomorrow's Parties. If late 60s New York City had a social headquarters, a meeting ground for the musicians, models, writers, painters, politicos, poets and photographers, for the actors, activists, entrepreneurs and otherwise uncategorizable entertainers, it could be found just above the northeast corner of Union Square. There, at 213 Park Avenue South, between 17th and 18th Streets, stood Mickey Ruskin's Max's Kansas City. Ruskin opened his two-story restaurant, bar and sometime performance space in December 1965, the same month, not so coincidentally, that Andy Warhol saw the Velvet Underground. Like Warhol, Ruskin had observed the seismic shifts taking place in popular culture that year, and, following his successes of sorts with the 10th Street Coffee House, the Ninth Circle, and Les Deux Magots, desired a new venue where he could gather the cross-pollinating elements of the New York scene. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. The necessary distinction between those who set the cultural agenda and those who followed it was marked at Max's via his infamous back room, a relatively small salon, about 25 feet wide by 30 feet deep, permanently bathed in a red glow and thick with smoke, with barely a dozen tables, all of them occupied by the hallowed elite. The elite of the elite sat at the large brown table to the front of the room as one entered. I've got that right. Significantly, though Ruskin could frequently be found out front of the venue, limiting entry to those he considered suitable, the back room itself was rarely guarded. Rather, as Danny Fields described it, there was a magic invisible force guarding its entrance. Basically Danny Fields, who went on to manage the Ramones, so we got connections left, right and centre here, was as much a guardian of the back room as anybody else. And Fields' criteria was as simple as it was elusive. To be in the back room, nothing was required except you be fabulous. You didn't have to be rich, you didn't have to be beautiful, you didn't have to be famous. You just had to be fabulous. Few were more fabulous than Eric Emerson, the larger-than-life young actor who went from appearing in Chelsea Girls to a starring role in one of Warhol's most popular movies, 1968's Lonesome Cowboys. That year, he accompanied Elda Gentile, a Queens-raised student attended the nearby School of Visual Arts, to Max's on the night of her 18th birthday. Their date was a gift from her celibate boyfriend, another SVA student who was already part of the Max's scene. Gentile had seen Emerson in Warhol's new film, Lonesome Cowboys, just a few months earlier, and, like many of the women who encountered him, was instantly stricken. Don't mind me quoting you here, I hope. He was the most beautiful man on the planet, she said, and even though he was crazy, he was brilliant and he was ahead of his time and he had a personality of innocence. He'd wake up in the morning like a child wakes up in the morning. Yes, it's another day. This is cool. Yet even though, or perhaps because she was in Emerson's company, Gentile received special scrutiny upon entering the back room. Every eye was on me, she said, recalling how mystified she was by the experience. You have to figure that here is the biggest city in the world. Why would you, as one person, be enough to cause the attention of everybody in the back room of a nightclub, looking at you with discretion to say, oh, now, what's she about? What's this going to be about? It was scary as all hell. But that was the nature of the back room. As a result, few who could not hold their own in the company of the fabulous would dare step over the threshold. Those who did would get that look, said Danny Fields, describing the stare of non-recognition, and you would not feel welcome, and you would look for an empty seat and people would move up to take up more room at their tables. You just know it, it's kind of a radar. Thus did the magic invisible force save on the need for a paid doorman, and thus did Max's come to thrive. And Elda became absolutely as regular and welcome in that back room, I'm sure, as anybody. And not only did Elda join us today, it's apparently her, can we say what number? It's her 60th birthday today, so happy birthday, Elda.